Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we have talked a lot of NBA today. We talked about the crazy trade, the ridiculous trade that took place between the Bulls and the Thunder yesterday, with the Bulls sending Alex Caruso 1-for-1 to the Thunder for Josh Giddy, something that I don't quite understand or wrap my head around. If someone has a justification for that, go and throw that in the comments. I'd love to hear any kind of justification for why the Bulls might do that. We also talked about JJ Redick being hired by the Lakers. An interesting decision. We all kind of saw it coming after all these reports, but I'm curious to see how it actually will work out. And then we just finished talking about two max extensions that were signed, one by the Pacers, Pascal Siakam, and one by the Kings, Malik Monk. We talked about what they mean to the team and how that will help both of their teams in the future if they want to continue to grow. We're going to move out of the world of the NBA, though, and into the world of baseball, the MLB, to close out our show. We got two segments here. As always, we're going to close off our show with our Friday MLB Power Rankings, and then we're going to, but in this segment here, we're going to talk a little bit about that NL wildcard race. It's kind of crazy. I know I touched a little bit on it, I think, last week when we were talking about how crowded it is right there. There are 9 teams that are within 4 wins of each other. If you go and look at the box score, or at least the standings, in the NL, there are 9 teams that are within 39 to 35 wins, and there's only 2 of those teams that are going to get playoff spots. The other playoff spot currently is held by the Braves, who are a little bit above that threshold, but it is a wild race. And with the trade deadline just about a month away, this is when these teams that are in that kind of middling position need to decide whether or not they are going to be buyers or sellers at the deadline. And I'm not sure what's going to happen. We'll talk about which teams might be buyers, which teams might be sellers, and which teams should be buyers and which teams should be sellers at the deadline. But before we get into all of that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments, in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. Excuse me. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into some MLB talk today, starting off with who is going to buy at the MLB deadline, right? There are so many different combinations of things that could happen here, right? The last time that something like this happened was in 2009, right? There were 7 teams that were in the race there, right? And there were only 2 wild cards at the time, so it's very, very similar. All of these teams, like I said, there are 9 teams that are anywhere from 35 to 39 wins right now, and with it right around the corner, there's only a couple teams that really have separated themselves. The Phillies have separated themselves in the NL. The Brewers have separated themselves in the NL, and I guess you can kind of say the Braves, although they are kind of hurting and almost falling back into that group, so we might even have 10 teams there right now. But for the time being, we're going to take a look at the 9 teams that are right there in the standings, right? So right now, for clarity, the 9 teams that are in that kind of middle standing together are the St. Louis Cardinals, the San Diego Padres, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the New York Mets, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Washington Nationals, the Chicago Cubs, the San Francisco Giants, and the Cincinnati Reds, right? Those are the teams, those are the 9 teams that are right there with between 35 and 39 wins, all jumbled up together. Now, only 2 of those teams are most likely going to make the playoffs. There are 3 wild card spots, but the Braves have 41 wins. They are 5 games up on everybody else that I just mentioned. So they've got a little bit of wiggle room. But out of those teams, who is going to add? I can tell you off the bat who I don't think is going to add at all. The Washington Nationals. I'm a Nationals fan. They are a year out, probably. It doesn't make sense for them to add right now, especially how they've just kind of said, "Oh, we don't really care how this season goes." That feels like what their attitude has been right now. But if they go on and rattle off a couple wins right now, them and the Mets are the two hottest teams in the NL. I expect them and the Mets both to be sellers at the deadline. But right now, they are tied in that wild card race. Ever since Grimace threw out that first pitch for the Mets, they are 8-1, which is ridiculous. They are now tied with the Nationals. They were like 5 games back just a week or two ago. So anything can happen in the game of baseball, but I don't expect either of them to add. The Pirates, they could add. They've just called up Paul Skeens, but I also don't feel like they're in a position to add guys. The teams that I think will definitely add, the St. Louis Cardinals, they've got a little bit more of an aging core. They're kind of on, you go through the slope of contention, right? You have your first window, which is, hey, we've got young, exciting stars, and we're gonna make sure that they have everything they need. Then you get your contending window up here, and you have your falling off point of your guys. Right now, if the middle is the Cardinals, they're a little bit past their contending window, right? Their stars are getting a little older. They need to get that championship now. They need to continue to add. The Cardinals, I absolutely expect to go and get a couple arms for that pitching. Get some bats that are actually hitting nowadays. They've had a slumping Paul Goldschmidt, someone who they counted on a lot to be a big part of their offense. But they need to excuse me. They need to add more. The Arizona Diamondbacks in there as well. They're kind of on they haven't hit that top of the bell curve yet. They just made the the World Series. They're the reigning NL champions. They've had a little bit of injury issues. They're not going to add too much, I don't think, but they'll probably add, maybe an extra arm for depth, some bats for people that are struggling in the lineup or more injuries protection. Same thing with the Padres. They're the same role as the Cardinals, right? Their guys are getting older, kind of getting over the hump. They've already kind of made those big moves. They traded for Soto. That didn't work. They went out and they got Machado a while ago. They got Xander Bogaerts, who's struggling a little bit this season. They've gotten the pitchers. These guys need to make the move now. And the Reds are also in that kind of thing where they're not going to sell. I'm not sure if they're going to add. I don't know if they're going to go all in this season, but if there's a year to go all in, this is probably a good year to do it because I'm not sure who is going to be paying a lot right now for guys. But the Reds are a team that might be doing it. Like I said, I don't think the Pirates, I don't think the Nats, and I don't think the Mets are going to be adding. I think all of those guys are probably going to be sellers. The Pirates might not be sellers. The Nationals have a little bit of a question because they are close to contending. They have some guys coming up soon. A question is Kyle Finnegan. Kyle Finnegan is one of the best closers in baseball right now. He's third in the league in saves, 21 saves on the year, and he's been having a great season. But also, closers like that are tough to find. Do the Nationals hold on to him? Do they trade him for some good value? That is the kind of question that the Nats are going to be asking. The Mets, I don't know how long this Grimace run is going to go, right? But, I don't expect them. I expect them to be true sellers at the deadline, right? And then the biggest question here is the Cubs, right? The Cubs and the Giants. They're both teams that kind of have gone all in at this point. The Cubs and the Giants they made a lot of moves this offseason. They signed back their guys. The Cubs are coming off a playoff appearance, right? They made some big free agent moves, but it hasn't really worked out the way they wanted to. And they seem like they're the teams that are going to buy, but they don't really have the assets to go out and buy players right now. They're kind of stuck in limbo as far as competition. This is where the Giants have been for a long time. They're kind of stuck in this mediocrity of a wild card maybe berth, and the Cubs are right there with them, which is not exactly where you want to be. They're not true contenders, but they're also not bad. So that's where you have to make your decision to buy or sell. I think this deadline is going to be wacky. I don't think it's going to be one of those deadlines where we see a huge, massive move made. But I think some of the people that are going to be sellers and some of the teams that are going to be buyers are going to come out of left field. I don't know who is going to be a seller and going to be a buyer because of how close it is in that National League, especially. And there's really no good way of telling right now. We're just going to have to wait a little longer. The deadline is about a month away from now. And I mean, really outside of the NL, I mean, even in the AL, it's really jumbled up there, right? There are lots of teams that are kind of in that 35 to 39 range, right? If you extend it down to 34 in the AL, there's another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's another 5 teams. So half of the league is between 34 and 39 wins right now. So it's going to be really crowded in the middle, and some of those teams are going to make tough decisions. Some of those teams are going to have to blow it up. We'll see what happens. But anyway, if I had to put some money on it, in the NL at least, the teams that are going to buy, it's going to be the Cardinals, the Padres, the Reds, and the Cubs. Teams that are going to sell, the Mets and the Nationals. And then other than that, those other teams, I could not tell you anything that's going to go on with them. But anyway, let me know what you think is going to happen at the deadline. We got a lot of time to figure that out. But we're going to finish up our show every Friday, like we always do, with our MLB Power Rankings. We got maybe a brand new name at the top. There's been a lot of moving and shaking around the MLB this last week. Lots of crazy streaks. The Mets, like I said, are 8-1 since we last did our Power Rankings. So we'll talk about that and much more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.